Steve here. Now, you might think the Australian story is all about the mines, the resources. But you'd be wrong. The real story, the one that matters, is happening in the suburbs. It's where the Australian dream has twisted into a seven-figure debt trap.
Just look at that number, $1 million. And no, that's not for a penthouse on the harbor. That's the median, the typical everyday home in an Australian capital city. It means, on paper at least, we're looking at a nation of median millionaires. But you and I both know paper wealth can go up in smoke in a heartbeat.
And this slide tells you everything you need to know about the risk. The whole world is watching the U.S. government juggle $39 trillion in federal debt. But the really fragile situation, it's unfolding down under. Australian households, on average, are carrying debt that's 112% of the entire country's GDP. Let me be clear, they are the most indebted consumers in the entire Western world, period. So to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down. We'll start with the $1 million paradox. Then we'll get into the rate hike trap that's got homeowners in a chokehold. After that, the supply mirage that's keeping prices sky high. And we'll finish up by looking at why this all amounts to a global minefield. All right, first up, the $1 million paradox. How on earth can a country look so wealthy, so flush with assets, but be so dangerously fragile right where it counts, at the consumer level?
Well, the answer is simple. The easy times are over. The Reserve Bank of Australia, the puppet masters pulling the economic strings, they've been forced to make a move. And by cranking up the heat with interest rates, they've started to expose the deep cracks that were hiding right behind those $1 million front doors.
And that brings us right to the mechanism of this whole crisis. Let's talk about the rate hike trap. See, Australia is a nation built on variable rate mortgages. It's a structure that makes the entire system uniquely and dangerously vulnerable to what the RBA did next.
So what was the trigger? Right here. Inflation. It didn't just creep up, it exploded, hitting 3.8% in January. For the folks at the RBA, the alarm bells weren't just ringing, they were screaming. They had absolutely no choice but to slam on the economic brakes, hard.
And slam they did. The cash rate got hiked, and hiked aggressively, to 3.85%. But listen, it's not going to stop there. The big banks, they're already calling for more. What we're watching is a clear, hawkish path toward a cash rate of nearly 5%. Now, for households leveraged at 112% of GDP, this isn't a shock. It's a Goliath.
And here it is, the real consequence, the human cost. Right now, as we speak, 1 out of every 3 Australian homeowners is officially in mortgage stress. That means they are fighting tooth and nail to make their payments. They're cutting back on everything, food, gas, you name it, just to keep the bank from taking their keys.
Which leads us to the biggest question in this whole mess, our third section, the supply mirage. Think about it. If a third of the market is in deep trouble, and interest rates are this high, why in the world aren't housing prices crashing?
It's because the entire market is a glass house built on a supply mirage. The foundation isn't solid concrete, it's just empty space. There simply are not enough homes to go around, and that fundamental scarcity is completely warping the laws of economic gravity.
I mean, just look at this chart. It makes no sense, right? The RBA jacks up interest rates like never before, but median home prices still climbed 9% last year. The pain of higher rates isn't forcing people to sell, because where would they go? The lack of supply is a trap, and it's got everyone locked in place.
And don't expect a flood of new supply to save the day. It's not coming. Labor and material costs are through the roof, so new projects are stalling out before they even break ground. Sure, governments talk a big game about upzoning to allow for more density, but those policies are painfully slow. The result? A whole generation is locked out of homeownership, while the people already in are getting squeezed until they break.
So this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, a global minefield. You have to understand, this isn't just some local Australian problem. The extreme fragility of the Australian consumer, it has serious implications for the entire world economy. See, the U.S. economy runs on corporate profits and massive government spending. But Australia? It's a completely different story. Yes, its wealth comes from digging stuff out of the ground, but its domestic economy is propped up almost entirely by household debt. That right there, that's the critical vulnerability.
And that's exactly why the Australian economy is a consumer minefield. The biggest banks are, for all intents and purposes, giant mortgage companies with a flag out front. If this housing market truly cracks, it's not just a housing crisis, it's a banking crisis. It's a consumer-led recession that will send shockwaves through all the global commodity markets that depend on Australia.
So, you want to know where this is all going? Forget the GDP numbers. Forget the official reports. You watch this. Auction clearance rates. It's the percentage of homes that actually sell at auction every weekend. This is the only true, real-time indicator of what the Aussie consumer is thinking. It tells you in plain language if they're feeling confident or if they're absolutely terrified.
And that, my friends, leaves us with one final, critical question. As the pressure builds and builds inside this great Australian glasshouse, what are those clearance rates saying right now? Watch that number, because it's the number that will tell you exactly when the first crack appears. This is Steve. I'll see you at the open.